Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we talk about all things good and the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Rafe, and you know what I'm going to say? This is going to be a great show, but actually this week I think I'm right. Harry, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I would assume that most of our shows are great shows, and if they're not great, then they're at least above average, aggressively above average.
They're all great shows, and it's interesting how prescient that statement is every week. Harry, we have a great guest with us tonight, and who would that be?
Yeah, we're introducing, or I think we've previously America's favorite naval aviator, Brock Cinder Friedman, who is now apparently the resident expert at Bufnagle Enterprises for celestial navigation. Brock, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Harry. Lovely to join you guys, and looking forward to this podcast tonight.
But before we go any further, we need to make sure we thank our listeners. We really appreciate having you guys here. Without you, we would not be the global top 10% podcast that we are. As usual, you can send us email at bufnagle@bufnagle.com. Search the interwebs for Bufnagle, and we will be there for you. If you're new to the podcast, hey, thanks for coming. We are glad that you are here. And hey, give us a whole bunch of listens. Download the whole canon. Feel free to send us your comments, and we'll get right on that, certainly if they're good ones. And remember to leave us a 5-star review. Those are really great. And tell your friends to listen, because that's we have a very small marketing budget, and you guys are our marketing budget. So make sure you market for us and tell everybody to share the love, share the buff, and be part of the buff team. Yeah, we did the Shackleton thing, and there was a lot of discussion in that what do you call a sextuple? Is that what that is? It's like a pair of trilogies about the Shackleton expedition in way back 100 and some years ago. And there was a lot of celestial navigation. We said, who would know that stuff would be our friend Cinder. And we gave him the assignment. We said, Brock, learn everything you can about celestial navigation and tell us what that is. But before we go there, I want to get a catch up on what are you doing these days? We haven't talked to you in about a year. You're still in Florida teaching Utes how to fly helicopters.
Exactly. So I'm still an instructor pilot down here in Florida. The only real change was that we changed the training helicopter in the Navy. So we're starting to transition from flying the Bell 206 to the Augusta Westland 119. We're calling it the TH-73 Thrasher, which is, fun, motivating name. But we're still completing that transition process. So right now we have just over 50 new aircraft delivered. Our end goal is around 120 to 130 aircraft. So next week, I'm going to fly up to Philadelphia, get a brand new aircraft, and fly it back down to South Whiting Field.
A brand new aircraft, like with no miles on it.
No miles. You get in, it still has that fresh helicopter smell.
Nice. Nice. Okay, so wait. So you're going to fly, do you get up on a Tuesday morning and you say, let's go to Philadelphia? You fly up there, they give you the keys. Do you know?
That is literally exactly how it's going to work. So next week, I'm going to get on a commercial flight Tuesday morning and fly up to Philadelphia. We're going to stay in a hotel. Wednesday morning, we're going to drive out to the Leonardo factory. They will literally hand us the keys to the aircraft so that we can lock up the doors. And we'll do just kind of our normal pre-flight, and then we'll get in. We'll start flying down. 2 days to do it. So we'll usually fly down. Last time I did a delivery, we flew from Philadelphia down to Myrtle Beach. Stopped in Myrtle Beach for the night, and then the next day, left our hotel, got back to the helicopter, and then we flew down to South Whiting, which is just north of Pensacola.
So it has keys. Does it have the remote clicker thing?
No, I wish it had the remote start feature. The remote start would be a really slick add-on. I'll have to talk to the engineers about that one.
So they have keys that just lock the door?
Yes, there's no key to start the helicopter.
Now, is this a special key? I mean, I got to imagine this thing is under so much protection that you couldn't that doesn't keep it from getting stolen. It just keeps somebody on base.
Usually if you leave something at an airport, it's pretty secure.
Usually.
I'm not sure the last time you've just managed to waltz onto a tarmac, but you usually have to pass a couple of checkpoints.
I hear you. So you're going to get this brand new helicopter. I assume they have tested it, right? They've put it through its paces, and they know that this one works. And you go pick it up. And is it you and how big's your team?
Just me and one other pilot.
Wow. All right. And then you decide to go to Myrtle Beach because you have family there, or
It's got a nice hotel, and we like the beach.
All right, that's nice. Is there like Myrtle Beach International Airport, or do you just land on the hotel roof, or how do you make that go?
So we just need to go to an airfield that's secure, meaning that it has a fence around it, so no one is in fact running up to the helicopter in the middle of the night. So we can really stop at any number of airports. We have a cool app on our phones that tells us where are good places to go.
It's just kind of like the Air Force's app that they have of like, this hotel is great, that hotel is great, this hotel has a resort next door, this one has free spas.
Who has contract gas, so we can buy gas at cost with certain vendors. So whoever has the deal with the military to sell us that fuel at that price, we make sure that we go to one of those airports because we don't want to give the taxpayers the wrong impression.
You don't want to give them the wrong impression. Yeah, I got
Words have meaning.
Yeah, I hear you. So you're going to fly that. You're going to come back, and you're going to stop in Myrtle Beach, and then you'll come over. So you do fly like
we'll do
like real high, real low. What do you?
Oh, we as long as weather's good, we'll just keep it low. Kind of doing what helicopters do best, flying around low, looking at stuff. If we see something interesting, maybe do a quick orbit of it. But yeah, last time we were at 2,000 feet for most of the flight home, and just talked to everyone we need to talk to, and it's not too bad. It's about 2-hour flights each day.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And you're at 2,000 feet, and you fly generally along the coast from Philly down to North Carolina. Is that right? So
actually, no. A lot of it was over land. We only bumped out to the coast to stop over for the night.
Do you get a special permission to go through the restricted area over DC or no?
So we don't go through that one. We do go through some of it's not restricted airspace, but you do have to file a special request to go through it just south of that. And then there's established routes for helicopters that we fly on.
All right. And so you will have the latest, so what does it have that the old ones didn't have? And is this hard? Is just a better machine, or does it have automatic, all sorts of stuff?
Yeah, it's got an automatic flight control system, which the old one didn't have. It's got just a lot more power. The engine's a lot more robust, so it makes for a good trainer. It's an all-glass display cockpit, so instead of the steam gauges that we had in the Bell 206, we have just, MFDs and PFDs.
Wait. Steam gauges. So they were...
Yeah, see, here's the thing, Dad, is you're old.
But so is the equipment. Okay, what's a steam gauge?
So it'd be something taking like a direct reading. Think like a thermocouple coming to a dial, revealing
your round dial, your standard 6-pack that you'd have in your airplanes.
Yeah. Why is it called steam?
Because think back to the olden days of like a locomotive or something, when they'd have their pressure gauges, it would be literal steam.
Steam gauges. So it's okay. So they're not really steam gauges; they're just called steam gauges.
No, not a steam-powered helicopter, thankfully. I don't want to fire up the boiler.
Steampunk kind of. Okay, that's all right. Because when America's Favorite Rocket Scientist was on, he talked when he first worked on the shuttle. They worked on these control units that had tapes that would get wound one direction or the other direction, and that would line up with a needle. And they worked out the programming to make that thing go. So, I mean, steam gauges. I thought you never know. There might be a. All right, so it's all glass, meaning everything is a computer display.
Digital, yes.
Okay. So do they do training does that ever go down? Is there anything mechanical in the plane that in case the power goes out, you can still make it go?
Oh yeah, you could lose all electrical power and still fly, but it would be a little bit more challenging.
Well, you've still at a minimum have your airspeed indicator and your altimeter, right?
Yeah. So we'd have a rudimentary attitude indicator, airspeed, and altimeter.
Yeah. Okay. So, you don't even need steam for that.
Nope.
All right. That's nice. Okay. So it does all these fancy things.
Yeah.
And these guys that are coming in to fly that you're teaching, they come from where? How do they get to be on Brock's Top Gun school?
So there are people who have selected helicopters, and they're either in the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Coast Guard, or they're an allied nation that we have an agreement with, and we'll train them up. So Italians, for example, come through our program, and we train them how to fly helicopters before they go back to fly for the Italian Navy.
All right. Okay. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
All right. I hear you. All right. So part of that is GPS, right? And GPS tells you where to go.
Mhm.
But back in Shackleton's day, back when he was sailing for the British, and they were sailing around Antarctica, there was no GPS. That was not even dreamed of. They had a sextant and a book of stars, I guess, and they made their way from Elephant Island to South Georgia Island through the Drake Passage, and it was very scary, but they did it, and it was awesome. And the whole time Harry and I were going through that, we were having this discussion. How did they manage to do this in the ship? And I realized, like, I know a little bit about how the stars rise and set and like where the North Star is. I know you can't see it from Antarctica, from the South Pole. How do you do celestial navigation? What is a sextant? What's in those books that they look up? And what are the plus and minuses of doing that? All right, go. Essay question. You get 20 minutes.
Wonderful. All right, so just want to preface this. Celestial navigation is occasionally still taught at some schools, none of the schools that I've gone through, but I believe that they did bring it back to the Naval Academy, as well as I think if you were to become an officer on a naval ship, you would take some, again, rudimentary course in celestial navigation, because one of the perks of it is it's, as long as you do the math correctly, more or less infallible. The planets are not going to lie to you, so you can repeatedly determine your position. Whereas something like GPS, nice and new age, vulnerable to spoofing, electrical systems go down, something like that. But Shackleton proved
spoofing.
So
you can make a GPS read other than its true location. It's sneaky.
there's a lot of cyber attacks in general with GPS. So if your devices aren't encrypted in some manner or capacity, some enemy can be out there and spoof your system for your system to lie to you about your actual location.
So it sends you the signal that you would expect from the satellite, but it's not the right signal. It looks like it is, but it's not, and then you're in the wrong place.
Correct.
Oh, those bastards. All right. Okay, so you won't get spoofed from the stars, and Shackleton and his buddies didn't get spoofed doing that. But what did they do with, what is a sextant? I see people, it looks like a little telescope, and there's an angly thing, and what is that? How does it work?
Yeah, so a sextant is a tool that's used for navigation, and it's been around for quite some time now. But if you want to know just how far, we're going to go back a couple steps. So it started off with something called the quadrant.
Okay.
Quadrant is something that is 1/4, 90 degrees, so a quarter of something. And that has history all the way back to 1500 to 1000 BC. And then the Egyptians used it pretty extensively, kind of right around 150 AD, when they started to measure the sun and establish some planetary principles. So From there, things went unchanged for another 1500 years or so, to the invention of the octant, came into being by Isaac Newton. And octant, per the name, think 1/8. It was only 45 degrees. So Isaac Newton did invent it, but it's often credited to John Hadley, who was an English mathematician. He kind of popularized it and really turned it into a navigational tool.
So when we were kids, we launched model rockets, right? I did back in Wisconsin. My brothers and I, we did that, and there were some other people in the neighborhood that did that. And we had this little tool that we created. It was a block of wood, all right? It was a block of wood, and we put two little screw eyes on the opposite ends of the thing, and we turned them so you could look through the two little circles, and you could line something up. And then we attached a protractor to the side of this thing, and then we attached a string to the fixed point of the protractor. We tied a string to that, and we tied a weight to that thing. Yep. So if you're looking directly parallel to the Earth's surface, that string will hang straight down, and it will read 0 degrees. And if you're looking up at something, it will show you the angle.
Yeah.
The angle. All right. So we would know the angle that our rocket went up. We would pace off how far back we were. We would do some simple trig, and we would determine that our rocket was a certain distance in the sky. And I don't know if that's a machine, if that's called anything.
That's very similar to those early models. They'd use a plumb line, which is like your string coming down and hanging, and then they would look up and find the sun through the sight glass.
Okay.
Luckily, the modern sextant kind of makes that a little bit more user friendly. So sextant comes from the Latin word sextus, meaning 6, because the degrees that it spans is 60 degrees. That'll become important later on. But the sextant has a series of mirrors on it, as well as a telescope. And along the bottom, the curved part that spans 60 degrees, it has all your iterations. In addition to those degrees, there's also a micrometer on the bottom. The micrometer is what allows you to get your very accurate readings.
So are they doing the same general thing we were doing? Is like I said, they had a plumb line. Is it just to determine that? What's that? Is that called the azimuth? Is that that angle?
Yep. So when you're conducting celestial navigation, big picture wise, you're looking for a celestial body to obtain a fix of where you're at. So when you look through the telescope of a sextant, it's got the mirrors, but the mirrors will actually allow you to align 2 images. So what you're going to do is you're going to get part of the view just on the horizon. So you have that level field so you can establish the azimuth, right? Establish the angle. And then you adjust the angle that the mirror goes until you find the sun.
Okay, wait. Them. Okay, so you're looking through a thing and it has 2 mirrors and it's showing you 2 things at the same time. It's showing you the horizon, right? And then it shows you the sun. And what you do is you turn a knob until the sun appears to line up with the thing?
Yeah, so you actually adjust one of the mirrors on the bottom. So if you envision the curved part, and it's got the slide on it that goes back and forth. So by adjusting that, you're adjusting one of the mirrors and you're placing the sun coincident with the horizon.
Okay.
And then once they line up, you can look then at where the marker falls on your arc, and it will give you the degrees or your azimuth for the sun.
Wow. Okay. So, and you said you can get really accurate. So do they do a thing where they measure first of all, okay, we have to say this, never look directly at the sun, right? All right, but they do this thing where is it like the center of the sun or the top of the sun or the bottom of the sun?
So you're putting the bottom of the sun on the horizon. And they do have filters that you flip down so that you're not looking directly into the sunlight.
Well, they
use filters, and they also use silvered mirrors, so it helps protect your eyes.
Okay, and that because they're coincidental, you get a better reading than what we were doing. Because, well, why is that? Why couldn't we just take the azimuth by doing what we were doing? Why do we lose that precision in doing? I mean, we just had a string. I think we tied a hex nut on the end of it. But is that not the same?
There is. So it takes advantage of a mathematical property that's escaping me, and I forgot to write it down. It has something to do with dual angles and how they what's the word for 2 angles that are identical? Like you have two parallel lines bisected by a line.
Congruent. Oh,
yeah,
wait,
congruent.
Well, that's that is when parallel lines are cut by a transversal, opposite interior angles are congruent, right?
Boom, there it is.
Oh,
I forgot that. I'm so silly.
I keep looking. Okay, I'm waiting for I see these. What are they called? Contrails. When you see the airplanes go over, and sometimes you'll have 2 of them going almost the same direction, and you'll see this other one come across it. And I really want to get this photo of that because that theorem is as you can tell, it's stuck in my head. But I want a photo of when parallel lines are cut by a transversal, opposite interior angles are congruent, and not only opposite interior angles, but opposite exterior angles are also congruent. So. Right. Okay, so it takes advantage of that, the sextant thing with the mirrors?
Yes, it does.
I'm not going to ask how because that we probably have to draw a picture.
So the important part here is that it gives you the angle of the sun above the horizon. That is the important takeaway that we're getting from our sextant.
Okay, so do you have to do this? Like if I take the angle of the sun, at noon, that's going to be different than 10 a.m.
Yeah,
and then it's doing okay. So is this latitude or is this longitude or which one are we talking here? And how does
right now we're talking latitude. The sextant is how you determine latitude. Longitude you can determine by no more than knowing what time local noon is at your position. So in general, for celestial navigation, you need 3 things. You need a sextant.
Yeah.
You need a clock that is set to UTC, i.e. Greenwich Mean Time.
Yep.
And you need your nautical almanac, which is Just pull it out of the back pocket, and then you're all set to go.
And you get this
You
book.
probably
Okay.
get it on your phone these days too, huh?
Yeah, you can. I think there's online, if you have internet. Unfortunately, Shackleton had poor reception in Antarctica. But
Yeah.
so once you have those three things, you're able to get a fix. So I just talked us through how we get the measure of the sun,
And okay, yep, keep going.
and that plays into calculating latitude. It doesn't just spit out. The bottom of the sextant doesn't tell you your latitude. You got to do a little bit of math.
Okay, so I would think that if I knew that it was noon on my meridian,
Mhm.
if I take that azimuth, does that not tell me my latitude?
The azimuth of the sun will tell you your latitude.
At noon.
Yes, the math yes, but noon relative to when it's noon in Greenwich will tell you your longitude.
Right. But I'm thinking, but if I like, Shackleton and Worsley, it was like they can't say, well, we'll wait for noon.
Oh,
right. So they have to take it at a different time of day, and then this becomes a really hard problem from a very simple one.
Not too bad, because all you have to find is when your local noon is. And all local noon is the
Thankfully,
highest
there's a
point of
clock
the sun
tower
in the sky.
right in the Weddell Sea, comes right out the Drake Passage, and looks
They
like
just listen
Big
for the
Ben.
gongs.
Right.
Okay, but determining exact noon has got to be I look at it, and is the sun at its peak? I'm like, yeah, I don't know, it's higher than I am, but how?
Well, that's why they would shoot multiple fixes, because if you think about you're determining as it's getting close, figure out the azimuth real quick. Okay, let's check it a minute later. Is it getting higher? Yes. Okay. So as you gain experience with seeing where the sun crests in the sky, kind of when to expect it the next day. And because you have your clock set, you kind of know, hey, noon is going to be maybe 1 minute later, maybe 2. So you maybe shoot your 3 fixes, see which has the highest azimuth, and then boom, you have your time to use.
Okay. All right.
So kind of like you were saying.
What if you can't get a reading at noon? What if you can't do that at noon?
Well, luckily, your almanac not only has all this information for the sun, but it also has it for the moon, for stars, for any number of
So you just need a
prominent celestial
planetary body
bodies.
that's fixed.
Correct. Yeah. So
You need with this. Okay.
I was going to say in the nautical almanac they have sun, moon, and then I think it's 7 or 9 prominent stars. So at night, depending on where you are, depending on what stars you can see, you're still able to obtain these fixes.
Okay, and you have to do them when those things are at their noon, at their peak.
No. So what I described was taking a noon high reading with a sextant. So that's a type of sextant reading. The other times, it would just involve a few more steps of math converting the time, because the tables aren't always for all the odd times that you're going to have. So you just have to do some interpolation to get your longitude.
Okay. All right. So you pretty much you do the azimuth trick with the you do the azimuth trick with the
Sextant.
with the sextant, and then you try to find the one that's the peak, and then
If you're doing the noon high approach, yes.
right, if you do high approach, but if you're not doing that, then you have to do a different thing.
Well, then if you shoot at the top of the hour, you can go to your almanac. They have it for all the hours of the day. Find that hour, do your time offset to find your longitude, and then take the azimuth, compute your latitude.
Okay. So here in North America, we have the benefit of having Polaris, the North Star, and it's not exactly, but it's almost exactly on the pole. If you would draw it's not really a pole. If you would connect the North Pole and the South Pole and draw a line all the way through them up into the heavens, they come really close to the North Star. And if you see those pictures, what do they call them? Those long time delay pictures. What's it called? Long exposure film.
Time
Right?
lapse.
Yeah. All the stars make circles around the North Star. And I said earlier, if you take the sun's azimuth, that's your latitude. That's not. I'm an idiot. That's not right. It's if you do with the pole star, that'll tell you, right? If you're standing right under the pole star and you do that little trick with the protractor that I did when I was a kid, it'll be at 90, and that's where you are. And if you're at the equator, that thing will be at the horizon. And if you're in the South Pole or Southern Hemisphere, then you're screwed. But Do they use the pole star at all, other than if your sextant breaks, you just kind of go that way until you run into something you
Well, yeah,
recognize?
you can certainly use it as a reference, right? So if you're choosing to shoot some nighttime fixes, you can find Polaris and use that. It changes the math that you do a little bit. So for example, when you're shooting if you're doing the high noon shoot,
Yeah.
after you get your azimuth, you subtract that angle from 90, and
Right.
then you take that number, you apply a declination. So depending on where you are, northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, and this is all in the almanac,
Yeah.
you either add or subtract. So if you're in the northern hemisphere, you add it, southern hemisphere, you subtract it, and then you convert any decimals to minutes, and then it tells you what your latitude is.
All right. So it's all in the book is really what it is. And it's a matter of Harry, did you ever have to do any of that stuff?
No, I didn't. The most I ever did was calculations of how to convert like all your latitude, longitude to degrees, minutes, seconds, that kind of math. But that's just equations.
Yeah. Okay. So why don't they? It seems like that's a pretty straightforward thing, and in a couple days or weeks, you could teach young aspiring pilot type Navy guys or Army guys to do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Is there a reason they don't do that? It's just considered obsolete, or
probably because in a couple minutes you can teach them how to use a GPS. That's just it's that much easier.
I'll give you that.
And with technology these days, that much cheaper too. Sextants are expensive. I did look up how expensive they are, and yeah, there's several $100s if you want to get a sextant.
And that's because of the mirror stuff and how precise it gets.
Yes, because once you get proficient at reading a sextant, if you have calm seas, from what I read, you can get yourself to within 1 nautical mile of your true position. So if you were to compare your celestial fix with your GPS and you're good at it, you'll probably be within a mile.
So with Shackleton and Worsley trying to do that in 30-foot swells.
Mind blowing. You think about the periods between those waves and the amplitude of them and just how that little boat must have been rocking and rolling, and the fact that the other men had to hold him solid while he shot these fixes. It is incredible. It is incredible what they did.
So how could you even, do you just try to get it right? Like I'm going to try to time it. So when I'm at the top of the wave, I'm going to try to get that one, and then I'll come back when we're sloshing through the trough. I'm going to try to look at what the number is.
I can only imagine it was a combination of that, and then I think you guys also spoke to how they were kind of early pioneers of doing the average, right? Of kind of finding the average solution and then using that, and that would kind of cancel out some of the error.
Yeah, that was.
Sounds like you got a whole lot else going on, huh?
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, it's 11:59. Who wants to read the stars again?
Yeah, but if it's not hard enough, there's some very fine motor control there that you have to manipulate. And so unfortunately, it was cold for those guys.
Oh, it was cold? Really? It was cold?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a little slide on the bottom of the sextant. It's not like a wheel. Like I have a calipers in the workshop. All right, mm-hmm. and it reads like you put it on a piece of wood and you say, oh, that's a 1/4 inch off of what I planned it to be, but it reads to thousandths of an inch. And what there's a little wheel that I roll, and you can actually, if you're very careful, you can roll it and you can watch it go 001, 002, 003. I mean, you have to do that very carefully. I just wonder why they don't put like a driving. I'm sure there are different ones with different methodologies for doing that, right?
Well, having not operated one, I can't tell you the exact mechanism, but I do know that the micrometer I mentioned on it, so it gives you the degree, right? And then the micrometer will give you the arc minute, which is 1/60th of a degree. Yeah. And then that's what will give you your closeness.
I guess we're going to have to do this. We're going to have to talk to the...
Great. So I know what I'm doing here in a week and a half. We're going out to the store, buying a sextant. We're going to stand in the backyard. Like, all right, well, it's Boy Scouts time again.
Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to the corners of the yard, and we're going to take readings with the sextant, and we're going to see if the plat thing at the new house, if those stakes are in the right place.
There you go.
That's what we're going to do. All right, Brock. Thank you very much. So you keep teaching these young piloteers to How do you see these just having switched from whatever aircraft you were on for the Bell and Howell, whatever that was, to this new one? Like, you had to go through a learning thing to do that, but you're an experienced pilot doing that. And these are just young whippersnappers coming in, right? They have done their flight training in the fixed wing aircraft, and then they come to you and they say, "Teach me this rotary thing." I guess where are the pitfalls and the places where they get messed up? How does that? What's difficult about? What's difficult about flying a helicopter? Where do you see them having? Where do you see their problems? What do they? Where do they get in trouble? Everywhere.
Everywhere. One of the common ones is radio calls, right? That's always tricky for anyone who's learning how to fly, is all of a sudden getting into a saturated environment. You guys know this.
Yeah.
When suddenly you check in with approach and there's, all the Deltas and FedEx Heavies checking in. You're like, oh my God, I just want to enter a downwind. Getting them through that can be tricky. Specifically with this aircraft, compared to the Bell had a high inertial rotor head that made it very easy to do auto rotations. It was very forgiving because you could store a lot of energy in the rotor system.
All right, and that auto rotation is. Tell us about that again.
So when you secure the engine or you stop providing thrust via the engine to the rotor system and you start falling through the air, that uprush of air drives the rotor system. So you're building that rotational energy by allowing gravity to do its thing. And then at the end, you kind of throw onto the air brake and you touch down nice and smooth.
Right.
With the Bell, it was
literally at the end because there's not another option.
Yeah, you get one chance. So that's why we teach them to do it well. So the low inertia, which is what the current helicopter has, it is quick to lose that energy. It's slow to build it up and then quick to use it. So you have to be a little bit more precise with when you apply the power at the end.
Now, you said a heavy inertial.
So high inertia was the old one. Low inertia.
Is that because it's heavy in a rotational sense, or it's mass? It has a lot of mass in a rotational sense. Is that because it's bigger blades, or it's
so we went from two blades to 4 blades, and we also went from an underslung semi-rigid system to a semi-fully articulated system. We're getting in the weeds here, but it does come down to design.
Helicopter in the weeds.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So they sit with you they do the aircraft training thing for what? Is this a 6-week thing, a 6-month thing?
Closer to 6 months, I'd say probably 6 to 8 months right now. Maybe a little bit longer, because we're still doing this big transition, right? So we're still trying to figure out the syllabus and making sure that all the events make sense, all the maneuvers make sense. So we haven't had too many graduates yet, but as time passes, that'll spool up.
Are you going to bring a sextant on board now?
I'm
tempted. All right, buddy. It's
like, hey, Shackleton can do it in a boat. I should be able to do this in a helicopter.
You got to tell them that ought to be the challenge. Is they have to be able to fly the helicopter and take readings while
he's going to hover at the same time he's taking a sextant.
There we go.
No, would that make a difference if you're at high altitude when you do that?
So actually, yes, that does play into your calculations. You have to calculate your height above sea level, which traditionally for a person, they stand about 2 meters high if you're my height, or 2.5 if you're my brother. But you do have to take that into account. So for example, if you're on the ship and you're at, elevated on the ship, some of the naval ships, you'll be at 40, 50 feet standing on the bridge. You have to take that into account. If you're on land, you would need to know how far you're above sea level still. So you'd have to know your local barometric pressure or something, do some calculations to figure that out. Or actually, no, you wouldn't. You'd know what your elevation was.
Well, Brock, thank you for joining us. And Harry, thanks again for always being with me here today. And Brock, thanks for as they say, both of you guys, thank you for your service. I know that some people say that and they just say it because it's a thing to say, but I know a lot of us really mean that. And thanks for keeping our helicopter pilots with their aircrafts in the air. Certainly, if you come over Indianapolis, feel free to wave, but at least stay at 2,000 feet if you would, please. That would be great. Anything else, Brock?
I'll share one more fun fact with you, just because I did think this was cool and learning. So I mentioned earlier that celestial navigation uses stars and celestial bodies, right? There's a difference between a celestial body and a celestial object. And I didn't know what that was. But a celestial body is a single, tightly bound, contiguous entity. So, one firm object, whereas a celestial object is complex and less cohesively bound. So if you think about a comet can be kind of both. So the nucleus of the comet, that frozen core of ice and dust, that's a celestial body. But the comet as a whole, to include its tail, is a celestial object.
So what about like gas giants?
That would be a celestial object because it's not tightly
It's not bound.
Yeah. Well, you're talking like Jupiter?
Yeah, like Jupiter.
I'm going to go with body for that one because I think you would treat that as a single entity.
But you would do it but it's all about taking the reading, right? And where you take the reading on the thing. You said you try to get the bottom of the sun to line up with the horizon in the sextant. If you're looking at Jupiter, is it going to be that? I guess. I mean, Jupiter. Okay, that's the other thing.
You've seen Jupiter through a telescope.
Yes, I have, and it moves so fast through the field of vision. I cannot imagine trying to use one of those things as a point of reference. Like by the time I get it in the field, there it moves on. Nothing.
You got me beat. I don't know. That was trying to be a simple fun fact.
All right, no, I got it. That's okay. Yeah, so don't use those spiral nebula as your celestial objects for taking what do you call it? Making a hit, shooting a point. What's it called?
Shooting a fix.
Shooting a fix. For shooting a fix, don't use the Crab Nebula. I guess it was probably the answer there. Harry, all good?
Everything's great.
All right, it's good to hear. Hey, we're looking forward to seeing you next week. Brock, it's always great to see you. And for all the listeners out there, thank you for joining us. Remember to seek the good, be the good, and spread the good, and enjoy the adventure of life.